Hi everyone, Greg Heilman here with the Sound on Stage. Welcome you to another episode in our Behind the Curtain series. Today I have the honor to be joined by someone who is well known in Seattle theater circles, a multiple award winner and nominee for our own Sound on Stage Awards this past year. Currently the head of directing and playwriting at the University of Washington School of Drama and the founding artistic director of the Hansberry Project, a professional African American theater lab. Valerie Curtis Newton. Welcome to the show, Valerie.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Greg. I do have just one little caveat to my introduction.
Okay.
I'm still on faculty at the University of Washington, where I do teach directing, but I'm no longer the head of directing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I stepped down about a year ago now, but I'm still actively involved. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Well, that'll probably help answer one of my later questions around how you balance all the things that you do. So maybe that you've stepped back, maybe it's a little easier. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
okay.
But over the past few years, since I've been doing this, attending shows, reviewing, and basically covering live theater around Seattle. I've had the pleasure of taking a number of shows that you've been involved with, mostly as a director, and many in partnership with a particular theater and the Hansberry Project, which you founded. Just to name a few, The History of Theater, About, By, For, and Near, written by the incomparable Reginald Andre Jackson at Act Contemporary Theater. Back in 2021, wow, that's man, time flies. Last Drive to Dodge at Taproot in 2023. The Wonderful Clydes at Arts West this past season, which is interesting because a tie-in to Reading, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. Um, and then most recently for me, Black Nativity at Intiman Theater, which marked the second year, first for me, but second year of a return of a Christmas tradition here in Seattle. And for anybody who read my review of that, they probably read that I found it more to be an experience than anything that you could consider a play or a musical.
Yeah.
It was truly extraordinary and something truly unique. Currently, you have Blues for an Alabama Sky, which had its official opening in Seattle Rep this past Wednesday, February 5th, and runs through the 23rd. And as you and I talked about before we started with the weather here in Seattle, I was unable to make opening night, but I am coming next Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to that. Um, but what I have a lot I want to talk to you, but first let's talk about the current show. So what can you tell us about it? How did it come to your attention? Why is it important to you? And what do you hope audiences take away from it?
Yeah, I directed the play last year at Playmakers in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And the cast was made up of a professional actor and then uh, three graduates, two for professional actors and three graduate students. And it was in a very, very deep, almost in the round kind of thrust theater. And when I was given the opportunity to direct it here in Seattle, there are a few things that were interesting to me. Number one, uh, the big stage, the Bagley Wright, is 650 seats. It's a big proscenium stage, which is a whole different staging mentality in order to deliver the play. It was a full equity cast. So I brought along a few of the people that had worked with me on it before, and we gave ourselves the challenge to really exploit the resources and the facilities available to us through the rep. And so, in many ways, it's a completely new production of this play that I think is unfortunately consistently timely
Mm,
because it tells the story of a community um, that had been through an aspirational burst of creativity and energy and progressive politics that sort of comes to a screeching halt with the arrival of the Great Depression. So the issues of reproductive freedom, of economic equality, of LGBTQIA plus liberty, all of those things are part of that era in the 1930s, and it's back again. And so I really am excited about the relevance of the play. I'm also really interested in having people understand that the Harlem Renaissance was about more than just people dancing and drinking at speakeasies, that people were living lives and they were having to make tough choices, and they were building communities, sometimes communities of choice, to get them through difficult times, and still manage, despite having their dreams battered, finding a way, more often than not, to keep going. And so I think that message is very potent for my community right now, for the Seattle community right now, as we're entering a new kind of political retrenchment.
Yeah, and it's interesting and sad and fascinating at the same time how a lot of these plays, and it's anything from cabaret to, which I went to see Covenant last night at Arts West, how a lot of these things that took place in the middle of the century or before in the 20th century are still relevant. And you'd think that we'd have got past a lot of this stuff by now, but unfortunately we haven't. But the nice thing I think about a play like what you're describing here, and like I said, I can't wait to see it, is that we especially as we look back through history, you sort of get these visual ideas in your head of what a certain area, whether it's post World War II, the South. You get an idea of your head of Americana, but you don't get to see what's going on behind the scenes when you pull the curtain back because you lose a lot of that. You lose a lot of that detail as you go through history. And the nice thing about some of these plays is that you get to see that. It sounds like with this play, it's the same thing. You get to see a lot of that detail about it with the human stories about what's happening kind of behind.
Yeah, I think I've said this a lot recently because I'm talking about my work to promote the play, but a big part of why I make work is to allow people from different backgrounds to sit together in the room and share an experience. And I really want very much for folks to recognize the full scope and breadth of the humanness of Black Americans, and our place in the American fabric, and also to accept that our history is everyone's history and everyone's history is our history.
Mhm.
And we just need to acknowledge that we're in this on this journey together, and we have to figure out how to get along. And without tipping the boat over, it's okay to rock the boat from time to time, but I think right now that we're in danger of tipping the boat over.
Yeah, yeah, I would tend to agree with you there, and it's an interesting time for sure. Now, with your philosophy on choosing projects, and obviously, messaging for you is important, and given the philosophy of the Hansberry Project, then maybe we should start there with. Maybe we should discuss that first, going back to the creation of the Hansberry Project and the mission. Um, can we uh, uh, can we talk a little bit about that first? Because that's you're obviously a producing partner with the Rep on this play, and you've been a producing partner with these other theaters on these plays. How did that get started, and how did you develop the mission for the project?
In 2004, I started having conversations with Kurt Beatty, who was then the artistic director at A Contemporary Theater. And Kurt said to me that he really was interested in bringing back the sort of multicultural energy of Seattle's group theater from the 80s. But that since ACT was just sort of coming back from its own brink of death experience, that it needed to be careful how we did it. And so he was interested in having me curate some work, Black plays for ACT Theater. And I said, that's a beautiful idea, but I will not curate plays for you. What I'm interested in doing is creating a partnership where the work that we are doing infuses your whole organization. And he went to his board and they came back and said, for 5 years, we're going to let you curate a play in our season that will be budgeted on the same scale as every other play in our season, that will go through the same marketing program as all of our other work, that will in essence be an act project that the Hansberry Project influences
Hmm.
and can offer new ways of working, new ideas. And so we did that for 5 years. And then we sort of came to a fork in the road because I think that my intention was always just to expose a greater part of the community to the work of Black theater artists. And I think that for a time, as ACT was trying to find its financial footing, there was a move on the part of some folks to be interested in how many more Black and brown bodies would buy tickets. And so those two missions were a little bit in opposition.
Mhm.
Um, so we decided to end that partnership, and the Hansberry Project at ACT suddenly became the Hansberry Project at Arts West, the Hansberry Project at Seattle Public Theater, the Hansberry Project at you name it, the Hansberry Project there. And so we've been doing that since 2012.
Okay.
And we've been able to move towards supporting. We don't have a space, we don't have the budget to fully underwrite productions, but we can celebrate, support, and help present the work of Black theater artists. And so we underwrite line items in budgets of smaller theaters. It's like, if Taproot wants to do this play by a Black playwright, and we can help support that by boosting, you know, the equity wage, or paying for the health benefits, or allowing there to be shadow assistance. If we can help support that financially on our dime, then that's a great way for us to contribute.
Yeah.
And so we've been able to do that, and we've seen more work. We've seen more local folks doing work. And so I think in that way, ultimately, the mission has been successful and continues to be successful. During the pandemic, when everyone was shut down, we spent a fair amount of time working on a more national profile. So we're part of an organization of Black theater companies across the country called the Drinking Gourd, which was founded by the Hansberry Project and True Colors in Atlanta, that does commissioning and support for playwrights. So we're just trying to do all of these things to make sure that we don't have a pipeline issue
Hmm.
where people can say they just didn't know where the work was. We're saying we know where the work is, and we can help you know where the work is. And
Okay.
so that's the idea of how our mission has transformed and yet remains the same.
Okay. And I'm fascinated, and I think I don't know if it's a uniquely Seattle thing, but I'm really impressed the more I learn about the theater community around here, how each um, almost cultural organization we have. You have the Hansberry Project, which is focusing on African American theater. You have the Sita Iranian theater. You've got Pradhatwani, which is South Asian. You've got these groups of theater organizations, both professional and
Yeah,
community
at
that are
SA Teatro and CIS Productions,
yeah.
we ran our own new play festival for 8 years called Represent, where each one of us took a play and shepherded it through development and then did a week of presentations. So yeah, it's got a very Seattle has a very rich and deep thread of ethnically specific theaters. And so the trick is always, how do we encourage larger organizations to take on the work without killing the work of ethnically specific theaters who are doing it more at a grassroots and local um, level?
Yeah. Do you find that that has because I've noticed that with shows at the Fifth and some of the other theaters that are doing traditional shows, and we'll say Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, where they're more diverse casts. Do you feel that the existence of these individual smaller theater groups help to contribute to those more diverse casts because they're getting the opportunity for visibility?
It's a paradox, Greg, which means Yes, there are more people of color on the stages where they can make a union wage. But what that means is there are fewer people of color who are in positions to work for the less than union wage that some of the ethnically specific theaters can
Mhm.
afford. So, I can't afford $800 a week from rehearsal through the end of a run. So, if someone really good who's done a lot of our shows now has a union card, and during the pandemic, Equity got rid of its need for you to have a certain number of shows under your belt. So it said, if you're interested, just sign up. And that meant that a wave of very skilled, formerly non-equity artists are now equity.
Mm.
And we want them to make their wage. We just want to be able to produce work that showcases the best of the writing and the best of the talent that our communities have to offer. We're finding our ways, but it's requiring us to be consistently innovative and reinventing ourselves.
Yeah. Well, from I guess a state of the union perspective, so to speak, I mean, how do you feel we are, I guess, not just in the Seattle area, but even nationwide with regards to representation, not just on stage, but also in the stories that are being told from the African American and Black and brown skin perspective?
Hmm. I think that I can't speak for the entire country, but my sense of what I'm seeing is that folks across the country are being sure that we control more of the means of production so that we don't have to wait forever to see the stories we want to see. We tell them on the budgets we have where we are, and hopefully we tell them well. And the best of them will find multiple iterations that will maybe move up the economic ladder. Um, but it has eliminated casts with more than 5 people from many of the stages because they're just too big to be produced
Mm,
on the budgets that folks have now. I don't think that we are waiting so much for other folks to do our work as we are recognizing our own power to make our work. And we're also recognizing that our tax dollars live inside every regional theater. So we have a right to expect to have our stories told in the spaces where our dollars fund.
sure.
And so it's not that Seattle Rep is doing us a favor to present this play. It's that, in fact, it's serving its mission for which it has written grants and got funding as getting state aid, getting government aids. So we're part of the narrative story of all those grants.
Okay.
So we get to expect to be included. And I
Makes
think
sense.
that expectation is a big shift. We're not, as my father used to say, we're not begging, we're buying. And so that's a big mental shift for most communities of color, which is just make what we make it good, strive for excellence of craft, and then it will find its level.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I think from what is there anything else we can do as patrons and fans of the theater to help along in that mission?
I think the big thing is that the field itself is struggling existentially with how to get people to come back to common space, right? It's um, it's so difficult post pandemic. People are not buying subscriptions, and
Mhm.
subscriptions was a critical element of the funding of work. Um, People aren't buying tickets in advance, so it's a
Yeah,
lot of like,
commitment, right? It's kind of a
yeah,
fear of commitment. Yeah.
yeah. It's like I don't know what I'm going to want to do 3 days from now. So on that day, if I can get a ticket, I will. Um, and in a way, it's like when theaters in Seattle used to have summer shows, like actually ran from uh, March to December, right? And it had shows over the summer. it was very difficult because when it's sunny here in the summertime, no one wants to go inside. So they made an adjustment, but now they're in the same time of the year as everyone else.
Yeah.
That same adjustment of getting people to come in for shows is like getting them to come in the summer for projects. So I think that we need patrons to encourage to come, number one, to talk up the shows, to encourage their friends and neighbors to take them in, and also to continue to endorse to the arts organizations that they patronize, to continue to endorse a breadth of experiences, a breadth of stories. Um, and so that responsibility does lie on the lovers of theater and not just the makers of theater.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Just keep spreading the word,
Yeah,
word of mouth. And you mentioned the trying to compete against other schedules, and it's not, well, with the pandemic, there's so much in on the couch now that you have to choose from at home, just getting people away from the TV and all the options that they have at home. And then once they get out, all the choices that they have out. So it is a hard
but in
situation.
teaching at the university, one of the things that I really appreciate about our art form, about all of the live art forms, is that it does require us to compromise and to get in space with each other. I know that every play is not going to be from my point of view, but I go to see as many things as I can so that I can be aware of other points of view.
Mhm.
And to be in a room with people of different viewpoints and to take in a singular event and then have the opportunity to talk about it at bars and post show discussions and coffee houses, the idea of creating a new public square for conversation and sharing is, I think, part of what we really need right now. We are so siloed in our political beliefs and in our artistic camps that we've obliterated the public square. And to the extent that we can rebuild it through the art we make and the culture we share, I think that it's only going to serve us ultimately in the long run.
Yeah, I find that the discussing of the show that I've just seen is sometimes more enjoyable than the show itself.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and do you ever run into a situation as a director when you're presenting a show that sometimes you feel maybe that you're, for lack of a better term, preaching to the choir, that you want to put a message out there, but that the people who you think should hear the message aren't the ones in the seats, that whether it's a political or a social message that you want to say, but the people that are the maybe the ones in charge, the ones in power.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think that I'm just old enough now to just want to put up a good show in front of as many people as will come to see it. And then again, rely on the people who see it to carry the
yep.
message out
Yeah.
into the world. Right. So, and this is where I can be a little anachronistic, which is there are a lot of people who say, I don't want to tell the audience what to think. I don't say that. I want to tell the audience what to think. I want to tell them what I think. And I want them to disagree or agree with it, but I don't want to pretend that I don't care, that I don't have an opinion. And so um, I want to be honest. I want to be authentic. I want to like give people a reason to have a conversation. Um, so that's my view of it. I don't want there to be 12 endings and the audience picks. There are people who do that, and I think audiences can find those people's work and go and see it, and that's great. I don't want to forestall that work or minimize the importance of that work. It's just not what I do best. I actually make very strong, opinionated work that often considers unrecognizable or under recognized points of view.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I want to do that.
Okay.
That's sort of my raison d'etre.
Yeah. And again, I mean, most theater goers I find are open-minded, and I think you know, if you could have something that is inventive and unique and really well done, it's enough to make people think, and maybe they change their minds, maybe they don't, but it's enough to put it out there, and that's what I appreciate about your work. Everything I've seen that you've put on stage has been something that I've really enjoyed talking about and thinking about after I've seen it. So I do
Thank you very much.
appreciate that. But going on the personal side, I do want to get back to that question I kind of hinted at earlier was how do you and I asked this of the last guest I had, Mariana DeFazio, dialect coach who also does acting, does teaching on the side as well. How do you balance all of the things you do between directing, between your work at the university?
Apparently, I balance it very badly. I'm always tired. I'm always tired. The good thing about being a teacher at the University of Washington is that we are allowed some time off for outside professional work. We have to have it vetted and it has to not interfere too much with our teaching schedules. So I've been able to do sort of a show a year for most of my time at the university. And between that and our summer and winter breaks, I've managed to do theater. There are some theaters that begin rehearsals in August. And because our school year starts late in September, I'm able to get in a show before school starts. Um, Conversely, I can do readings here and there.
Mhm.
And Zoom technology made it possible to do readings all over the country if we decide to access the Zoom platform. So that's been very helpful. Um, I also have to really pick and choose. You know, I say no to a lot of things. I've now built my reputation and my portfolio in such a way that um, I'm now able to work at home more, which also opens up some possibilities. So yeah, so this, and right now I'm on sabbatical, so that's another opportunity to get in some work.
Gotcha.
But you have to just be very particular and balanced, and where you can integrate your priorities, that's all the better. It's all the better.
Okay. Now you mentioned doing some work before in North Carolina. How often have you done shows in other parts of the country?
Um, I do it probably every other year in
Okay.
some way, shape, or form. Like right now, I'm in Seattle. Later on, in going into spring, I'll be at the Guthrie to direct another Pro Clegg play. Um, and in fall, I was in DC at Roundhouse Theater. Then I did Intima. Now I'm doing the Rep. Then I'm likely to do a fall show for one of the smaller theaters here in town. Um, and then next year, I probably will direct again something at the University of Washington. Um, I just, if they ask me and it fits my schedule and I want to do the show, I will do my best to do it.
Okay. Is there something about Seattle that keeps you here? I mean, I'm glad you are here. But is that
When I came here, I thought I was going to get my degree and go back to Connecticut. I'm an East Coast girl, but I moved here and discovered I like the Pacific Ocean. And I met my wife here and we built a life. And before I knew it, I had a house, a cat, wife, a dog, and health insurance and all of that stuff. So I figured out how to make it work. And we have a great life here. And I don't know that we're leaving anytime soon.
funny how that works? Yeah, we did that 10 years ago. We moved from Pennsylvania and haven't looked back.
Now you're not, in a minute, you're going to be from here. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't carry an umbrella anymore when it rains. You know,
you passing a big test with that. Great.
so what is next for you? Do you have anything scheduled, or is it are you just because you mentioned you kind of implied that you might do some smaller things in the area. Is there anything booked on the schedule now that you can talk about?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we will
There's
keep an eye out for sure.
yes, there's two or three more things, but not right yet.
Okay. And I will in our show notes, I'll make sure to link. I know the Hansberry Project's got a web page. I know you have a personal web page. And also I imagine both are on various social media
Yep,
sites as
absolutely.
well. So I will tag those as well. And I'll make sure to keep, obviously once I see Blues for an Alabama Sky, I will publish my review probably later next week. And I can't wait to see that. Like
Yeah,
I said,
I hope you enjoy it. I feel like it's good, solid work. Audiences have been responsive to it, and I think that folks are really going to want to check it out.
yeah. Well, one last question. So, as a director, when you have a show at a big theater, because usually the community theaters don't do the previews and then move into the production. How much do you typically change from previews in before you run into production? Are there usually a lot of changes? Is it usually just minuscule things as far as blocking goes?
It depends. I don't believe that I can give a lot of notes that I can't give the actors time to work on their feet. So as we have diminishing rehearsal time, the notes get less and less physical. It becomes much more about acting motivation and honesty and authenticity and being receptive. And I'm not someone who makes a show where you have to do it the exact same way every night. I want to build a box that you can play in and have different colors. But as long as we are agreed on what the critical events are that must happen, how you make them happen, I'm a little more flexible in. So when I'm working in a union house, technically after opening, I'm not allowed to give notes.
Hmm.
I read rehearsal reports, and if there were a problem, I'm in town, so I would ask that they would call. I would expect that they would call me. But if I were like had done a show in Minneapolis and something was happening with it, I can't just go and sit in and watch something or go and rehearse something. Stage management has the job of trying to maintain the thing we built. Um, so yeah, I pretty much try to operate on that principle of trusting the artists that I'm working with to maintain it, to grow it, to make it better until my thing is I say I keep working until there's no more time. My no more time happens on opening night. The actors no more time happens on closing night, but they're constricted by the part we agreed to during our time together.
Okay.
So yeah, so everybody has to work until they have no more time.
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. I learned something. Very good. Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
Valerie Curtis Newton, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to meet with me today, and I'm sure that our viewers will get a ton out of this interview as I have as well. So once again, Blues for an Alabama Sky is on stage currently at the Seattle Rep. Runs through February 20. I have it here.
Third.
23rd. Thank you. The search for it in my notes. So yes, go out and see it, and then we'll look forward to what you have next on your schedule. So,
Okay, great.
all right, once again, thanks for your time, and for you out there watching, thanks for tuning into Behind the Curtain. I'm Greg Hyland with the Sound on Stage, and until next time, I will see you at the stage door.